Good evening. I'm Travis Justice. Welcome to a wonderful Wednesday night where we are getting ready to have a powerful conversation. And I hope you are ready over the next half hour, 45 minutes to just learn a lot and be inspired by a movie we're going to be talking about called The Ravine. Last week, I was interviewed Robert Pascuzzi, the author of The Ravine, and I did it on my radio show on KXNO in Des Moines. That's on 1460 AM and 106.3 FM. And in radio, it's kind of funny because you have to take commercial breaks, right? So Robert and I talked for about 10 minutes, and it was like, okay, we got to take a break. We got to let you go. And I got done with that interview, and I was so inspired because I was like, there's so many more things I wanted to ask, so many more things that I wanted to have a conversation about. And I'm like, you know what? That's what Facebook is for. That is what YouTube is for. That is what Twitter is for. And so tonight, no commercials, no interruptions. We are going to be talking about the movie The Ravine. And it really is kind of fitting because we are in Holy Week. Tomorrow is Holy Thursday, followed by Good Friday, then the Easter Vigil. Then we celebrate the resurrection of Jesus Christ on Sunday with Easter Sunday. And I think you'll find that the release of this movie coming up this weekend, it's fitting to happen during the most holiest time of the year. The movie is called The Ravine, and it's inspired by true events. The Ravine is a story of faith, forgiveness, and most of all, the restoration of hope, even for the most seemingly unredeemable among us, because I think sometimes we view people as that they can't be redeemed. Get ready to explore and question your own views on faith, hope, forgiveness, and the afterlife. Don't believe me? Watch the trailer.
Please forgive me.
Bill, Danny just left me a really strange message. I need you to get a hold of him.
I'll check it out.
Danny? Rachel? Anybody home?
Chris, where are your mom and dad?
I can't wait for Mom.
Hey, Mom, what's going on?
You need to sit down, sweetheart. Danny killed Rachel and one of the boys last night.
No, Mom, you must be mistaken. Danny would never hurt the kids.
Hey, little man, I'll be running. I love you, Renee.
Oh, no.
My name is Detective Ben Lee. Danny committed these killings.
You did not know Danny the way I did.
Don't let this!
Too late to turn back. It's too late to turn back.
Help me understand. I want to know why.
Dad,
Yes.
are we all going to heaven?
The will of God will never take you, for the grace of God will not protect you.
We all have one question before us today, and that question is, what meaning will we attach to these events?
Think of it as a responsibility. Life changes in an instant.
It frustrates me that I can't figure out how to move on.
Why are you guys so mad?
We all experience darkness.
You want to know why?
I just met the most amazing woman. She told me to tell you the butterfly thinks you have beautiful eyes.
Ask yourself something. Do you want to be guided by hate or by love?
So powerful. Robert Pascuzzi is a Des Moines, Iowa native. He graduated from West Des Moines Dowling High School and then went on to Briar Cliff College in Sioux City. Besides authoring The Ravine, Robert has penned several other books, including Get Tough, Retire Rich. Go for it. Start getting what you want in your finances, career, health, and relationship, and destinies. Motivating stories from ordinary people who created extraordinary results. Robert has been married to his wife, Kelly, for over 25 years. They have 3 children. He has completed 2 Ironman competitions. Are you kidding me? 2 Ironmans? And he's dedicated to helping others live the same rich life he is living. And joining us now, live from his home just south of Kansas City, is Robert Pascuzzi. Robert, thanks for taking the time tonight. And that trailer, it's moving. It pulls a lot of emotions out of you.
Oh, it does. It does, Travis. I still get, goosebumps just watching the trailer, and I've seen it a million times. So, yeah.
You wrote the book in 2014, and it's inspired by true events. Take us through that inspiration and how you are connected to this story.
Yeah, so this is a period of time that my wife and I went through. It's some real events that we experienced, these were really close friends. You hear about this, you never think it's going to happen to you. We woke up one morning, had the news that this had happened, and looking back on this now, it's a fog, obviously, when something like this happens. This is the most unimaginable thing you just couldn't even entertain something like this. But I think after the dust settled a little bit of time had went by, what ended up happening is I kind of went one way, my wife went another way. My wife was really, really, just and you can imagine just the grief and the sorrow, and just she was really stuck for quite a while. This was her best friend going back to for sixth grade. But I kind of went on this other journey, and started asking some questions like, how did Danny get here? Like, how did this happen? How come I didn't see any signs? Is it me, or, what is this guy living a double life? What's going on here? That's just my mind. And so I went on this journey of trying to figure this whole thing out, which eventually we had an inspiration to write this book. And I called it, some people call it a lightning bolt or whatever. I call it God, and I felt like, and I know the exact date and time this came to me. And the way I explain this, because we do coaching now, and we help people understand how their mind works and how to think in a certain way so that you can produce the things you want in your life. And the way I like to describe it, Travis, is I really got emotionally involved with a big idea. And no matter, you look at anything that somebody's doing at a very high degree or a big magnitude, they're emotionally involved with the idea. And so I got emotionally involved with this idea that, hey, maybe we could write a book. And what if we could take this story and somehow, not knowing how at the time, but it's somehow turn this into something that might help one other family. That was really the kernel of the whole thing, the seed of the whole thing that we planted back then, was maybe we could help another family with this story. We had no idea how we were going to do it. We just knew that we were going to do it. And so we started that process. And, it's not really about us. It's about the journey we went on and what we learned. And I think what's going to happen is when folks come out and they see the movie, it's going to cause them to think. This is a movie that's going to cause people to pause, think, and maybe evaluate their life. And maybe try to see things from a different perspective. And the fact that when these types of things happen, and everybody's been through a rough time over the last year, right, with COVID, some more than others, but we've all experienced some kind of difficulty. It's, can you take whatever comes to you in your life and reposition it in a way that you look at it maybe differently, have a different looking glass through it? And if you can do that, like Dr. Wayne Dyer, one of my favorite teachers, he's gone now, but he said, if you can change the way you look at something, what you look at changes. But your perception has to change. And that's what we began to do with this event. And that's how we ended up getting to where we were with the book. Is we wanted to write a story that took something really, really, it was very tragic, and very dark at the time, and turn it into light. And the way that you do that is you push the dark out and you bring the light in. And that's what the story ultimately ends with, is a very uplifting, emotional ending where I think people will be inspired when they walk out of the theater.
So was this like your therapy? I don't know if you went to therapy after this happened or your wife went to therapy, but was writing a book like this therapy?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think it was it was. It definitely was. Whenever you're chasing something like this, and especially because we were so emotionally involved with this story, there was a lot of ups and downs, But I think it was a healing process for sure for us to go through this. It was different than the movie, I will tell you that. When we got on the movie set, that was a whole different experience. Now, because we're actually watching people, we're sitting there, right? You know how this, you're watching somebody play out an event in your life, and you're watching them play you. And so that was a whole other experience. And I think the movie was more about us moving through this space, because obviously we revisited the whole thing all over again. So all the emotions, everything came back. But I can tell you that I'm so very happy with the way the film, the finished product of the film. When you start a big undertaking like this, you kind of have an idea in your mind what you want, right? But how do you connect the dots, and how do you get it all together? Well, again, I just call it a God thing, because whatever we needed, whether it was the right actors or, financing or weather on the movie set or what, there was just so many things that had to come together. They always did. It just, sometimes it wasn't exactly how we were thinking it would come together, but, God's delays are not God's denials, right? And everything ended up falling into place at the end of the day. And, you can't see how it works out, obviously, till you get there. But now we can look back and see how all these dots connected. And, we're just very enthusiastic for where we are right now with the movie release on Friday.
Yeah, the movie release is coming up on Friday. Now, people are watching this on my personal Facebook page. They're watching on my personal Twitter page and personal YouTube channel. They're also watching on the WHO Facebook page in Des Moines. They're also watching on the KXNO Facebook page in Des Moines. And you mentioned the premiere. You have one in Kansas City, but there's also a premiere weekend coming up in Ankeny at the B&B Theater. This is going to be April 2nd through the 4th. But the big night really is for you is when you and your wife are going to be there on Saturday, April 3rd. That showing is at 7 o'clock. And then you're also going to have a book signing and a discussion before that. Are you anxious to come home?
Yeah, absolutely. That's why we did it in Des Moines. We could have released the movie anywhere. We chose our hometown here where I live for the last 25 years. But Des Moines, where I grew up, I went to Dowling High School, as you said, Travis. So a lot of roots, a lot of relatives and great friends still in the Des Moines area. And then we're going to release it in Sioux City, Iowa as well. I went to Briarcliff University, and a lot of support there as well. So I'm absolutely really excited about it. We're going to go to Sioux City first this Saturday, the 3rd. And then we're going to be down, as you said, we'll be down in Ankeny for the 7 p.m. showing. And for you guys listening, if you want to show up for that, we'd love to have you there. It's going to be a great event. We'll show up around maybe a little before 6 o'clock. And as Travis said, we're going to be signing books. We're going to be, photographs, whatever people want. I'm going to have part of the cast and the crew. Keone Waxman, the director, will be with us as well. And then we plan to do a Q&A before the film starts at 7. And then we'll get that rolled out, and then we'll pop into the film. So that's kind of the game plan.
I hope you get a huge turnout, especially in Iowa. I'm sure it's great for you to come home. You mentioned you went to Dowling. You went to Catholic grade school. Where'd you go? St. Pius in Des Moines?
St. Pius. I grew up in Urbandale.
So you go to a Catholic college as well. Was it meant for this movie to be released during Holy Week?
I think what happened is, as we got into the fourth quarter last year, and there was so much going on with COVID, obviously, that this disrupted Hollywood, and everything. There's this. I think what's happened is there's a new model that's being created now, and we had the awareness that we're at the end of the year. We know we're going to release the movie now in 2021, and my wife actually just looked at me and said, "Hey, I want this movie out on Easter." And, I just obviously agreed with her right away. Well, as I always do, right?
Exactly.
But I was like, yeah. Absolutely. This movie, there's so many, undertows into the storyline here. And Easter is about a new beginning, new birth, and regeneration, and that's so many themes that you'll see that kind of transcend our story. And so it definitely seemed just that was right. That's how we got there.
So if you're watching on Facebook, if you're watching on YouTube or even Twitter, you can use the comment section to ask questions. In fact, Dane has one. He lives out in California, and he wants to know, will the movie go nationwide? Which brings up, it used to be this thing would go to a theater, and you would have to wait for it to go to Netflix or HBO Max, whatever. COVID's changed that. So what is the actual release of this movie?
So, we're doing a targeted release that we just talked about in these 4 geographical areas. We're going to build up a lot of momentum, a lot of pent-up demand for the movie, and then we're going to push it wider into more theaters. So our goal is to take a run here theatrically and get it all across the country. That's what's going to happen. That's our goal. And eventually, we're going to release it on streaming platforms. That's all ready to go. It's set to stream in 66 countries. So we're going to have a wide net, streaming-wise. But Dean, here's the answer. Kelly and I, our dream with this movie was to see it on the big screen. We shot it for the big screen. It's a big movie. It's a multi-million-dollar production that, by the way, we personally financed every penny of it. And the reason I tell you that is simply that it shows you our level of commitment, because it was never about the money. Most movies, just like books, don't do anything. So we did it because we believed in the story. We wanted to help people with the story. I know this movie is going to go. I hope that you'll be able to see it in a theater out in your area very soon.
You shot the movie in New Orleans, which here's a connection. You and I probably crossed paths in New Orleans. I have my oldest daughter went to school in New Orleans at Loyola. My third child, Mary, goes to Loyola as well. So I've spent a lot of the last 6-7 years in New Orleans, and that's a hot spot to make movies. They're making movies all the time in New Orleans because it's friendly that way. Was that because of the business climate, or is there something about New Orleans that really fit? Because it was originally based in Ohio. What was it about New Orleans that you were able to make this movie work?
Well, you're right. It's a business decision. Part of it is obviously with the tax credits of Louisiana, but cinematically, we fell in love with New Orleans. We scouted a couple different areas that we thought we might want to potentially shoot. And when Kelly and I, we'd been to New Orleans and everything in the past, but when we got down there and went on a scout, we just decided, this is the place we want to shoot at. I mean, it's so, I love the architecture, the history there. It just dates back, there's no city there's no city in America like New Orleans. And
there's not. There's not.
I mean, I can tell you this. I think everybody on the cast and crew pumped on at least 10 pounds because we were there. We started in September with the scouting. And then you're right, we shot for 5 weeks straight. And man, by the time we got out of there, I felt like I ate my way through New Orleans during the movie. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with the crawfish, with the gumbo, with the po' boys, and it's not. And I don't know if you're a drinker or not. I drink a lot when I end up in New Orleans too. So it's one of you're either eating or you're drinking a lot.
I don't think I had a bad meal. I honestly can tell you that. Yeah. I mean, even just going into a little coffee shop. I mean, in the beignets. I mean, I'm sure you indulged in the beignets. I mean, you can't eat this. Those things are like crack. You eat one of them, you're gonna eat 27.
Are you eating beignets, or if you go to Cafe Du Monde, you're really just eating lots of powdered sugar all the time, right? It's just covered in that.
Love being there.
Yeah. So talk about. We were talking before we got started tonight. Did Oprah play a part in this? Did Oprah help you get this made? Was she an inspiration for you to get this made? How does Oprah fall into this?
Yeah, well, so Oprah was an inspiration. Here's the story. I'll try to give you the short version of it. So Kelly and I are watching. You remember when Oprah retired, right, from the show?
Yep.
And she did an hour-long special, and Kelly and I were watching it together. And in that special, she talked about this prayer that she would recite whenever she got to kind of a fork in the road in her life, where, I have option A, B, or C. Which one do I take? And so I wrote it down. I put it in I just grabbed my journal and I wrote it in my journal and just forgot kind of about it. Well, then sometime after that, we were on a flight back from Florida, and I pulled this journal out, and for whatever reason, I can tell you this, that I always knew I was going to write a book. I just didn't know what it was going to be about. This was percolating in my mind for years. But so I read this prayer, and at that moment, that's when the inspiration came to me, that I remember turning to Kelly and I said, I know what we need to write a book about. even though at the time it seemed crazy. Like I was never contemplating this before this, and I can tell you that I've never had anything so profound happen to me up until that point, and I've never had anything so profound happen since then. It truly was I think it was just a consciousness, right? It came into my consciousness is the way I like to explain it. And it was very clear that we needed to do this. And that's what the motivation was, or the inspiration to start that whole process. So Oprah, I feel like Oprah is responsible for this. And I know that this is going to get back to Oprah someday. I know that. I know it's going to.
Well, this isn't the OWN network, but we're close. It's the Travis Justice Network. I'm as close as I can be to.
I was hoping that you had her on speed dial, Travis, and that you could just give her a call.
I am not that connected. Scott has a question for you. He says, what was the most rewarding part of filming a movie?
I think the most rewarding part was getting close to the finished cut of the movie. Because, we worked on the editing of this movie for 6 months, and that's where the whole creative aspect of a film is. It's not the shooting. I know because we hadn't been through this, we get done with the shooting and I thought, oh, okay, we're done. Well, guess what? No, you're just starting. And so the whole editing process was very intense. It's very emotional. It's draining, especially because this was such heavy content and it was our story, the emotion involved in it. But when we finally I felt like, okay, we just came around third base and here we are, we're close to home and everything was coming together with the film and we're watching it, and right in this room, right where I'm at right now. That to me, I just had this, it was like I dropped a piano off my back. Like, okay, yeah, we've got it. Like it's going to happen. Like we're here.
I know the feeling, and it's such a larger scale, and I'm glad you like the artistic part of it, because the editing part is where you make the magic, isn't it? That's where the magic happens.
Oh yeah, you've got tons of footage and reel, and you got to piece it together. So it is the artistic, creative part of the whole process. We were just very fortunate to work with he's an amazing guy, and we're good friends now, Keone Waxman, who will actually be with us in Ankeny. He's coming in from LA tomorrow with a bunch of the cast. But, we were really blessed to have him as a part of this project because he really embraced what we were trying to do. And he helped, he got our vision. And so having him in the editing room with some really talented guys up there in Vancouver, that was, getting in the trenches, like that's what it felt like. We're in this bunker in this, in this building, and we're in there for, 8-10 hours a day grinding this out. But when we left there, I knew Vancouver, I knew we had the foundation for the movie, but then there's so many things that have to go into it, to get it to the final finished product. And once you get there, now having gotten there once, that's where it was like, bam, oh man, it was like, we did it, we did it.
But let's be honest here. I've been in the media for most of my life, and I would say movies are probably really no different than when I put my television productions together. And that is, you can have great writing, you can have great videography or cinematography, but it also takes great acting, right? And look at you have a very large cast, but these are 5 really, really recognizable faces. And let's talk about these 5 members of the cast. Let's start with Terry Polo, because a lot of people will remember Terry Polo from really Meet the Fockers, right? And she was also in the last 2 seasons of The West Wing. How did casting go? And talk about landing Terry Polo to be a part of this show.
Okay. Well, here's another interesting tidbit for you. Casting was crickets, okay, for over 6 months.
Really?
Oh, yeah. First time movie makers, we're in Kansas City, who are these guys basically, right? Even though we had a very reputable and successful casting team out in LA that we had partnered with. But we went out to so many different actors, and it was no. A lot of actors, these are names, very recognizable names. And what was interesting, Travis, is Terry's name came up early in the casting process, and so did Eric Dane's. But for whatever reason, we were going in different directions. And the way that all worked out was Eric. We had made an offer to another actor that was represented. His agent was also Eric Dane's agent. And so, unbeknownst to us, when that actor declined, he flipped the script over to Eric, and Eric fell in love with the character of Mitch. He loved the inclusiveness of the story, because there is obviously a religious and spiritual element, but it's very open and it's very inclusive for everyone. And so that's what attracted him. And then literally a couple of days later, Terry came on board. What happened is, once Eric came on board, it kind of solidified the project. And then, within 2 weeks, we had the top 6 actors attached, and they all came from LA. And then we filled the rest of the cast. Most of the rest of the cast was down in New Orleans. But I can tell you this, and again, this just goes back to this whole thing about falling in love with a big idea and staying with it and not dropping off. Because in any big endeavor like this, there's always escape hatches. We had so many different places we could have jumped ship on this. But, we're 6 months into this process, and the LA team called and said, hey, guys, we're going to have to push the project because you don't have any actors. And we're ready to go down in New Orleans in 30 days, and it's not going to happen. And, first of all, thank God we didn't push, because then the movie never would have happened. We would have been in the last year and COVID hit. But Kelly and I because we knew how this would work if we stayed with it, we just said, no, we're not pushing anything. The actors will show up. And they're like, okay. So I think they thought we were crazy. We're assembling this team down in New Orleans. We had 140, 150 crew down in New Orleans. And literally, Travis, that was on a Friday. The following Monday is when we got the call about Eric Dane. So, one of the points I want to make with this is to the audience is, because I always like to interject a little of my thinking here, because life is about learning and growing to me. And what I have learned through this process is there's a huge difference between being interested and being committed. Interested means we'll do it if it's convenient. Committed means you'll do it no matter what. And when we started this whole journey on this film three and a half years ago, we were 100% locked in and committed. And that's why I think we ended up attracting, because I know we attracted these people. We attract things into our life. And we attracted Eric Dane. We attracted Terry. These were the right people for the right role, because there is a methodology. Looking back now, I see that there's a methodology to casting the right actor with the right role. And Eric is amazing. He's now a personal friend of mine. He's an amazing guy. He's flying in here tomorrow, staying at our house over the weekend. Terry's awesome. Everybody involved in this cast, fantastic people.
So Eric Dane, people may recognize him if you are kind of into the Comic-Con thing. He was in Charmed. But if you are into Grey's Anatomy, he was a very big part in Grey's Anatomy. Very famous actor. He plays Mitch. Is he you in the book? I mean, is he you and Terry's your wife? Am I reading that right?
Yes, correct.
What was that like? Because I saw a picture, I think it was on social media yesterday, and it might have been a video of you sitting in the church talking to him and maybe coaching him a little bit. What was it like coaching a guy that's playing you and having captured that emotion?
Well, I just want to say I wasn't coaching Eric Dane. He definitely is. He's a professional. He's a pro. So, I might have been just trying to share a little insight, but I never tried to interject or give him my thoughts on how he should play this role, because I knew going into this that I just had an intuition that's not going to work. Eric kind of has we are very similar, and that's what I found out on set was, and my wife reminded me of this right away, is, Eric's a lot like you. And so I knew that I wouldn't want, if I was Eric Dane, I wouldn't want somebody trying to tell me how to do my job. And just like I don't like people telling me how to do my job. So I knew maybe if he asked a question, I'd, offer up my thoughts. But he didn't ask a lot of questions. I think he had an idea of how he wanted to play Mitch. And, at the end of the day, he nailed it. I thought he did a fantastic job. and he really brought to life the struggle and the paradox that Mitch faced in this whole movie. So I can tell you that, and Terry was the same way. I mean, Terry interacted a lot with Kelly, and I can tell you maybe it was just a little bit different in the fact that she was checking in with Kelly because of the sensitivity of some of these scenes. They're really emotional scenes, and she brought it. And I know Kelly just was so happy with Terry's performance and really appreciated her sincerity and in the role, that she really wanted to get it right. And she said that several times. I want to make sure that I'm representing you right in this film and that you feel like that's happening. And so I thought a lot of Terry because of the authenticity of her her undertaking in the movie.
Sometimes it's hard to play evil, and Peter Fasinelli is maybe your antagonist here. He's the one that kills his family. People will recognize him. He was in the Twilight series. How well did he play this part? And did you know he was the right one for this part as soon as you met him and as soon as you saw his audition?
The top 6 actors, they didn't audition. They don't audition.
That's something I didn't know. I didn't know that.
Yeah. The people down in New Orleans who were playing kind of the secondary roles, they all auditioned, and we went through a ton of people down there. But these guys are professionals and pros. They were hired to do a job. And to answer your question, and Peter now has become a good friend. He's coming in tomorrow. Peter was so awesome. He really was. And he did an amazing job playing a very difficult role. But I think that's the thing that attracted him to the role, is that he wanted to explore that. And he was ready for the undertaking. And, one of the things that I appreciated about him is his understanding that, this one act didn't necessarily represent this individual's entire life. This was a good person. This is somebody, Danny in the movie, is somebody I knew very well for over 20 years. Our families grew up together. Our kids grew up together, very close. And so even as unthinkable as this was, at how Danny got to this place, that he did what he did, I think, as an individual, I did have some compassion for Danny. And because Danny wasn't a monster. Maybe he was a monster in that moment, but his life did not represent that, the entirety of his life. That's not who he was. And I didn't have to go through that with him. He understood that. And I think you're going to see, when you see the movie, everybody watching too, Travis, they're going to see this, and they're going to understand when they see the movie, they're going to remember this, me mentioning this, that they're going to see that portrayed by Peter. He did an amazing job. And Peter and I there were some very difficult scenes in this movie. One of them was the murder scene. And I spent 3.5 hours in Peter's trailer trying to, just ingest as much as I could about who Danny was and, our relationship and all these things that I knew about Danny and what we think might have happened that night. And he was just soaking it all up. And he brought it to the big screen in a way that, very powerful performance.
One of the biggest stars people may not know is Leslie Uggams. She's a star on Broadway. She was in the miniseries Roots, and she's your spiritual guide here. And she just in the trailer, you could tell she has this aura about her.
Oh yeah. Leslie when she was on set, everybody knew it. She commanded everybody's attention, and you're right. She's a Hollywood icon. She dates all the way back to, her role in Roots, Kizzy. And Kelly and I were very fortunate. We got to go out to dinner with her and her husband a couple times and offset. And she just is an amazing woman. So many stories, and she's been in so many movies. Most people might recognize her just from the last couple Deadpools in there, but she played Blind Al, I think it was. But she is so diverse, and she has so much talent that she can really play so many different roles. But in terms of the role that she played here, she did play Joanna, who's a spiritual, representation or figure in the movie. that does hear the voice of God, and she is brought into Mitch and Carolyn's lives after this event to help them have an understanding of what really happened that night.
So I do want to ask you, because you have one more that I want to get to, and I'd like to know more about this, and that's Byron Mann, who plays Detective Ben Lee. So after all this went down, how much investigation was there? What did you all have to learn? And I don't want you to give away, what happens, but was there a pretty big investigation after this? And did Byron capture what you were looking for in the detective as you lived through that as well?
Well, sure, there was a lot of investigation. I did a lot of investigation myself because I want to make sure I understood as much as I possibly could about this. But and Byron was great. I mean, we spent a lot of time talking. And with Byron, I spent a lot of time on the phone with him before we even got to New Orleans, trying to help him understand everything I knew. Byron's a very talented guy as well, plays a lot of different type of roles, but he did a great job playing the detective in this movie. But, at the end of the day, Travis, all the investigation done, and this is what, is portrayed in the movie, is the reality of it is nobody knows. Nobody really knows what happened and why he did it. We can formulate ideas, but that was the whole point, is that, there's this climax back at the end of the movie, back at the ravine with Mitch and Carolyn. And it's basically, it signifies that they're moving on, right? They're going to let this go. And because they realize that they have to come back together and find a hopeful future. And there's no other choice. Life moves on. You got to go one way or the other. And Mitch and Carolyn decided to come back and go that direction. But in reality, I spent a lot of time digging into this, trying to find out as much as I could. How it is. You think you're going to find some clue that's going to explain. Yeah. Poof, we know what happened. No, we're never going to really know what happened, obviously, because that was taken to the bottom of the ravine with Danny.
So you mentioned moving on. Did you forgive? Because you said it's a movie about forgiveness. Did you forgive? Because I got to be honest with you, it'd be hard for me to forgive if I knew.
I mean, think about it. This is the thing: is how do you forgive? I guess in some respects, what some people would say would be unforgivable, right? Yeah. I would tell the audience I never really got to that place, And I mentioned compassion. I had a lot of compassion for Danny. I mean, does that excuse what he did? No, absolutely not. I mean, you're held accountable for your actions. There's always consequences, and but I didn't come out judging him right out of the gate. On the other hand, Kelly, I think there was a lot of anger, and that's natural, right? I mean, yeah. So she had to move that through that space on her own timing. It was a different timing and different road that she took than I did. But that's just how my mind is. I immediately went to, I'm the guy that figures stuff out. You know what I mean? I'm the guy that comes up. I ran a business for 25 years. And, that's how I'm programmed. I'm going to get the solution. I'm going to figure out the why, but the why never came. And what happens in the movie is the audience sees that it's not about the why. We know who did it. We don't know. And, what's going to happen is you're going to walk out of the movie and you're going to say, this is why I did it. And the next guy is going to walk out and think something totally different. It is not about the why. At the end of the day, it's about what did Mitch and Carolyn learn through this whole thing.
It's interesting watching the trailer, and I can tell the church scene's pretty emotional. Am I right? I haven't seen the movie, but I would believe the church scene is pretty emotional. And I'm like, hey, it's the guy from The Secret. And I'm like, that's Bob Proctor. And so tell me, how did Bob Proctor end up in your movie? Because, by the way, I still haven't figured out what The Secret is. I've been trying to find what The Secret is, and I don't know what The Secret is.
Well, The Secret was a movie that came out about 2 years ago.
I know the movie, but I don't know what The Secret is.
Oh, you don't know what The Secret is? Okay. I'll tell you what The Secret is, and I'll tell you how I met Bob. Okay, so The Secret is the creative process. How do you manifest something in your life? And the whole idea of The Secret is, excuse me, I'm going to have to let my dog out of here.
This is great.
Come on, go, Prince.
On television. this is what you do at its finest. Hey, you know what? I've got 145-pound Great Pyrenees upstairs, and I'm glad he's not barking because he would rock the microphone for sure.
Well, Prince normally doesn't say it. You know, he just sits there calmly, but he decided he heard enough of me. He's probably tired of talking. But so the secret is really, you know, how do things come into our life? Is it luck or chance? No, it's not. It's basically that we attract everything that comes into our life through our thoughts. Thoughts are things. And that everything that we want is on a frequency. And if you get on the right thinking the frequency of thought, you'll attract those things. And if you're aware of this and you work with the laws, and this is what Bob teaches, that everything happens by law. There's no luck or chance. You ordered it up, essentially, through your thought process. And so then we eventually will see the physical. Like if we worry about money, then what happens is we actually push it away. And so, you know, what you focus on is what you get, essentially. If you just broke it down to a simple term, is we attract what we think about all day long. And so you can look at Danny and say, well, what was Danny thinking about for probably not a couple days, but not even months, probably years this was going on. And so what the secret is that you become what you think about. You attract into your life what you focus on, what your attention is on, and what that will expand. And so it's understanding that there are laws of the universe that control everything. And if you work with the laws, you'll have probably a better harvest, if you will, in the fall. More of what you want will come into your life. And if you work against the laws, it will work exactly the opposite. And so what happened is, with Bob Proctor is I kept getting invited into these Bob Proctor seminars. Tony Robbins at the time was in our company. And
really? I'm a big Tony Robbins guy. It's funny we're having this conversation because right before I went on the air, my son and I got in this argument about motivational speakers. He goes, they're crackpots. They're just taking your money. He goes, he's 21 years old, so he's a little cynical that way. And my wife goes, you don't understand what motivational speakers mean to your father. They changed his life. He's done this, this, and this. And he goes, you did it on your own. You did the hard work. And I'm like,
you know, and that's a good point, Travis. The difference between Bob Proctor is not a motivational speaker. Bob is the world's foremost teacher of success and human potential. And it all starts with the mind. And so what Bob teaches is how your mind works. You know, there's no blueprint on this. You don't ever learn any of this stuff in school. And I find it fascinating. And I had gotten to the point, I started reading motivational books when I was 25 years old. And I digested everything I possibly could. I went to all kinds of seminars, and because I just wanted more in my life, and I knew it had to come through growth and you do that through learning. You have to study, and you have to study the right things. And so, 4 years ago, whatever, I finally go to this Bob Proctor seminar called the Paradigm Shift out in LA. And what Bob taught in that first day just kind of blew the lid off my head, because I'm like, this is the missing piece. It's not just enough to set goals and be motivated, because what happens is, and Bob teaches this, and I'm sitting there in the chair going, okay, that's me. When he described this, is what most people do is they'll set goals, and they'll set goals, things that targets they want to go after. These are things they think they can do. If A connects to B and B connects to C, I think I might be able to do that. Well, what Bob explained that day is those aren't goals. Those aren't goals. What a real goal is it's the big star you're shooting for up here, but we have no idea how it's going to happen. And most people won't even entertain those thoughts, and I didn't either back in the day. I'm like most people, because of lack of awareness. What I would do is, if I had that thought, I just dismiss it immediately. I just immediately dismiss it. I don't have the time. I don't have the money. I don't know somebody in that field, whatever it was. And what Bob taught that day, it's so simple, but so powerful. And I'll share it here. The whole premise of it is you don't have to know how. All you have to know is that you're going to do it. And that's how we got the book done. And in retrospect, I didn't know Bob back then, but it's definitely how we got the movie done, because the book was one thing, but the movie, that was a whole nother, elephant. And had we not met Bob, first of all, I believe we met Bob Proctor for a reason. I know it was not luck or chance. I thought it was, when I got back from that seminar, I told Kelly, hey, we got to hire Bob Proctor to coach us. I want more of this. Like, I was super jazzed. And we hired Bob, and we got to know Bob. And one day out of the blue, Bob calls me and says, hey, I'm reading your book, The Ravine. I had no idea you even had it. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's awesome. And he's like, hey, have you ever thought about having this made into a movie? And I said, well, I'd love to. Yeah. I just don't know how. I don't know anybody in Hollywood. He goes, well, let me call Phil. Phil Goldfine is who we partnered with on the movie. He's an Academy Award-winning producer out in Hollywood. He said, I'll call Phil. I've been coaching him for 25 years. I didn't think much of it. I hung up. 2 hours later, bang, Phil calls me. Hey, Bob told me to call you. I do everything he tells me to do because it always turns to gold. And so now I do everything Bob Proctor tells me to do, because it does work out. And so that's how the whole thing started. And see, you can look back and say, somebody could say, oh, you just got lucky. You met Bob Proctor. No, it's not luck. It's not luck. Because I had to go through that door. And first of all, we had to hire Bob Proctor. And Bob Proctor, I don't know if you can look this up. Bob Proctor's fee to work personally with Bob, it's an amount that most people would not be willing to put forth. And I remember and here's my example of this. When I got on the phone with Bob, I didn't know him. I said, Bob, I want you to coach my wife and I. He said, okay, here's how this is going to work. He said, first of all, I don't need to do this. The only reason I'm doing it is Peggy said you're a good guy. He gave me this amount, and it kind of blew me away. He said, you'll wire this money to me, and I'll call you next week. And he said, 2 things I want you to know. He said, we're not going to talk all the time. And he said, and if I find out you're not doing exactly what I tell you to do, I will fire you immediately, and you'll get none of your money back. And he hung up on me. And I know why Bob, now knowing Bob, the reason he did that is he just wanted to see how committed I was. Because again, and I learned this from Bob, big difference between interested and committed. Interested and committed. And this is why, when I look back on my life, Travis, there was a period of time where nothing was, it just wasn't going very well, because I wasn't committed. I was interested in all these various things. Who doesn't want a better life, right? But I wasn't committed to making it happen. And when I started to learn that I had to get emotionally involved, burn the bridges, right? I mean, like that old saying, you got to burn the boats in the bay. You got to take the beach. You can't go backwards. That's what we did with this movie. We went all in on this movie. We burned the boats. We can only go one direction. And that's in studying under Bob, I gained the awareness that that's what it was going to take to get a big deal like this done. To get a big dream done like this, we would not be able to waver. We had to stay fully involved, emotionally involved, and only see it done. And Bob teaches this, and this is the secret. This is part of the secret, Travis, is that you have to see whatever you want, whatever it is that you want in your life that you want to attract, be, have, do. You have to see from the end. You have to see it done. And you have to stay emotionally involved with that every day. This isn't something you dabble with. And this is what I learned. And Neville Goddard, in his book, The Power of Awareness, is a great book, talks about this, that you have to see it from the end. And when you see it from the end, you don't know it intellectually. There's a big difference between knowing something intellectually and knowing it emotionally and owning it emotionally. And when you own it emotionally, that's when the secret kicks in. The universe conspires, so to speak. And whatever you need, the money, the people, whoever, that's the creative process. And those people start, you attract those people.
It's interesting because success is different for everybody, right? But you said something that, because for some people it's not money. Some people it may be the creative process. But usually when we're the happiest and we felt our most successful is when we are committed to something.
That's right. When you're chasing a big idea, you feel alive, right? When you got something to get you out of bed in the morning, turns all the burners on, you're living. To me, that's living. And I there's so many things that, like, we went through a rough patch when my wife and I first got married. It was the money thing. I mean, there was always too much month at the end of the money.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And, and I just got to the point, Travis, where I remember one day, I was so fed up with this, hole I put us in. I just took the computer off my desk and smashed it on the ground. Because I used to go on and look at all the overdraft account, I was reeling off on my bank account. And I just got to the point where I said, I've had it. And I think that's a good place to get. But like where you just say, I've had it, no more. And then the money thing started going the other way for us. And it doesn't happen overnight. Nothing happens overnight. But, it over time, it did change. And you're right. It's not about the money. If you're chasing money, I can tell you guys this, and I learned this the hard way. If you're chasing money, it's like a butterfly. It's going to elude you. You attract money, or you attract forget money. You attract abundance into your life through the process of becoming. You attract it through the person you become. And that's not just money. It's that's a simple way of saying who you are is what you attract, and you do it through your thoughts. And this is I'm very passionate. You can see about this, Travis. And actually today, Kelly, my wife, is one of Bob's top consultants now. She actually has a business called Creative Living where she facilitates Bob's programs. But we study this stuff every day. We're into this stuff. And we know that it's not hocus pocus. This is real stuff, and it works. And that's why I'm so passionate about it. And we pass it off to our kids. My 18-year-old son, Travis, used this. He's seen this whole thing develop over the last 4 years, and he got emotionally involved with the big idea. And his big idea was to play football at Iowa.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks. He's going. I mean, this whole thing just came out of nowhere his senior season, and he's fulfilling one of his dreams. He'll be up there in June at in Iowa City.
You mentioned the elusive butterfly. The butterfly is a key part of the movie if you watch the trailer. And the premiere of The Ravine is coming up in Liberty, Missouri, in Overland Park, Kansas. The one probably most people here are going to be interested in because we're watching on the WHO Radio Facebook page, the KXNO Facebook page. I host a show on KXNO in the mornings. Is going to be the premiere at the Ankeny B&B Theater. There's going to be a book signing discussion with Bob. Or with Robert, rather, coming up at 7 o'clock on Saturday, April 3rd. I tell you what, Robert, I have had an absolute blast. I really, I thought we were going to go half hour. We've gone 52 minutes.
Is it 52 minutes? That's awesome.
It's 52 minutes. We had really good questions. A lot of people stayed on for the entire conversation. I can't. You thought about it. You made it happen. And I just want to say congratulations. And I cannot wait to see this movie.
Thanks a lot, Travis. I really appreciate it, and thank you for having me on the show. I just love being on and talking about this stuff, and love your show. So come out, you guys. Come out if you're in the area and you can make it to the B&B Theater in Ankeny. I'd love to see you in person. We're gonna have a great time. So hope to see you there.
Robert Pascuzzi, we appreciate your time. The movie is The Ravine. Check it out. Thank you for joining us for tonight's powerful conversation. I'm Travis Justice. Make sure to listen to the Morning Rush tomorrow on KXNO, 1460 AM, 106.3 FM. You can listen live at KXNO.com or on the iHeartRadio app. Good night, everybody.